What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing, the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I will continue my conversation with you concerning the complete history of boxing. Now, we're on series 33 of the complete history of boxing. We're going to take a look at Tuesday, February 18th, 1930, when Jackie Kid Bird would stop Mushy Callahan in 11 rounds, scheduled for 15 for the NBA Junior Welterweight Championship crown at the Royal Albert Hall in Kensington, London. Let's stop right there. Royal Albert Hall would be somewhat of a Madison Square Garden of England. It was a young man by the name of Len Johnson. He wanted to fight for the middleweight championship crown that was owned by United States, Elizabeth, New Jersey, Toy Bulldog Mickey Walker. Walker would defeat Deal the Tiger Flowers in Chicago, and he would win the title. That's another story. And so he drew the color line because you had 3 black fighters in the top 10. Harry Smith, the Harlem Thunderbolt, William Gorilla Jones, Landon Jones, and Len Johnson. Now, Len Johnson wasn't allowed to fight for a title shot because he was a black man. And if you had an eighth of blood that was black in your body, that eliminated you from fighting for a world title. And a title of any kind, to be honest with you. Bill Johnson, who was the father of Len Johnson, wrote several letters to Jack Kearns, the manager of Mickey Walker. He wanted a title shot. And he was really heckling Jack Kearns for a title shot, sending massive amount of letters. And to prevent Jack Kearns from causing Mickey Walker to look like he was avoiding a black fighter, although he drew the color line, he gave Len Johnson, or Bill Johnson, who was his father, the manager, an ultimatum. He would consider giving Len Johnson, I'm speaking of Mickey Walker, a title opportunity if he faced a young man from Scotland by the name of Tommy Milligan. Now, Tommy Milligan would have the British Empire European Middleweight Championship title. It was Commonwealth because he was from Scotland. And Mickey Walker would give Tommy Milligan a title shot over Len Johnson. Len Johnson gave up the British Empire Middleweight Championship title. And that would allow Len Johnson to go to Australia and fight for the vacant title. He would win, and he would not be allowed to fight Mickey Walker. Mickey Walker stated that if Tommy Milligan gave you a shot and you defeat him, I will consider giving you a shot. Mickey Walker would knock out Tommy Milligan in 10 rounds, eliminating his promise to Len Johnson. Len Johnson never got a chance to fight Tommy Milligan, which was the agreement that was made. So Len Johnson would lose his title, not on the scale, not in the ring. They would pull it away from him because Tommy Milligan earlier faced a fighter that Len Johnson would defeat for the title. You tell me where that makes sense. But I just wanted to bring that up because that was the arena, Albert Hall, the Royal Albert Hall arena. They didn't let black fighters fight in that venue. So Mushy Callahan was 24 years old. He stood 5'7.5" He had a 70-inch reach. He had a record of 47 wins, 14 losses, 3 draws, and 22 knockouts. After Jackie Kid Birdie was 20 years old, stood 5'9". He was a junior welterweight, had a record of 75 wins, 4 losses, 5 draws, and 29 knockouts. Now, who was Mushy Callahan? His name was Vincent Morris Shear. He was born November 3rd, 1905 in Brooklyn, New York. He died June 16th, 1986 in Hollywood, California. He would become a referee, a judge in Hollywood, California for boxing movies. He was a director for the stuntmen to make sure that they threw punches correctly, blocked punches correctly, and bobbed and moved out of the way to make it look realistic. He had a total bout career of 67 bouts, 49 wins, 15 losses, 22 knockouts, and he was stopped 3 times himself. He was in the ring with Spud Myers, Jimmy Goodrich, Jackie Fields, Ralph Chung, Todd Moran, Sergeant Sammy Baker, and Dick Hope. Let me tell you about Mushy Callahan. I had the pleasure of meeting him probably about 3 times. Very nice man. He was a very good referee. He was a good judge. But he got that job in Hollywood. And when I had a chance to speak with him, he was telling me about his endeavors. He told me about the time in which he came. He told me about the mob, but he also told me about his life as well. And he told me about some of the Hollywood actors that he met during that time, who he had to work with. And it was a very interesting story. So Mushy Callahan was a very interesting fighter. Let me show you Mushy Callahan in my boxing cards. Now, these cards are in plastic. I'm not going to take them out of the plastic. This is Mushy Callahan. I have 10 of these in various colors. As you can see, he was a junior welterweight champion. Very good fighter was Mushy Callahan. From New York. Now we'll examine another fight, and then we'll take out a scrapbook and take a look at a couple of matches and a couple of fighters. Thursday night, February 27th, 1930. The Boston Gob Jack Sharkey would stop London's heavyweight Phil Scott in 3 rounds, scheduled for 15. Madison Square Garden. Lou Magnolia was the referee. Now, Magnolia was siding with the claim of Phil Scott that Jack Sharkey tried to foul him with a low blow. The commissioner would upheld that decision. Jack Sharkey, I explained to you many times, he was jobbed. Max Melling claimed he fouled him. Jim Maloney claimed he fouled him. Phil Scott claimed he fouled him. All mob related. Jack Sharkey was 27 years old. He stood 6 foot. He was a heavyweight with a 76-inch reach. He had a record of 33 wins, 8 losses, 1 draw, and 8 knockouts. Phil Scott was 30 years old. He stood 6'3.5". He was a heavyweight with an 82-inch reach. He had a 64 win, 10 losses, 4 draws, and 29 knockouts. So let me drink some water 1 second. Phil Scott, his name was Phil Suffering. He was born January 3rd, 1900 in London, United Kingdom. 1 second. He died December 24th, 1983 in Southampton, Hampshire, United Kingdom. He fought from 1919 to 1931. He had a total bout career of 83 fights, 64 wins, 13 losses, 29 knockouts, and he was stopped 8 times. Now, he would win the British Empire Heavyweight Championship title from George Cook. He would take on Tom Heaney, who fought Gene Tunney in 1928. He was from New Zealand. He would lose to him. He would also take on Jack Sharkey, who he defeated, and Gypsy Daniels. Gypsy Daniels would stop Max Schmeling in 1 round. Max Schmeling would return the favor. He would lose to Gypsy Daniel. He was also in the ring with Otto Van Port, Young Stribling, Larry Gans, Victorio Campolo, Johnny Risco, the Cleveland Baker boy. Who was this other fighter's name? Paulino Escudon. I always forget his name. Let me show you these fighters for 1 moment. Let me get this book out. I'll show you some of the fighters that Phil Scott was in the ring with. Now, Phil Scott would become the British Empire Heavyweight Champion when he would take on this man and defeat him, George Cook. George Cook was the English heavyweight. And he would lose to Phil Scott. Phil Scott was a very tall fighter. And Phil Scott would become the British Empire Heavyweight Champion of the world. Well, of England. Now, Phil Scott was also in the ring with Paulino Escudon. Paulino Escudon was the fighter that Max Schmeling would examine a fight film facing Joe Louis. And he noticed Joe Louis kept dropping his hands. This is Paulino Escudon. He was from Spain. Paulino Escandon. Phil Scott would also take on Victorio Campolo, another tall fighter. He was in the ring with Primo Carnera as well. Victorio Campolo. All right, let's move on. Now let's take a look at the boxing cards. A couple of them here. You have a young man by the name of Paul Jr. This is Paul Jr. Here is Eddie Cannonball Martin. In fact, I'll show you a fight of Eddie Cannonball Martin. I'll pull out his scrapbook. Eddie Shea. I'll show you Eddie Shea in the Abe Goldstein scrapbook. In fact, I'll show you him in the Eddie Cannonball Martin as well. So I don't have to pull out. Well, I'll pull out Abe Goldstein as well. This is Phil McGraw from Greece. All right, let me pull out a scrapbook and show you some fighters. Let's show you some fights, I should say. Let me show you this fighter, Jewish fighter by the name of George Levine. Very, very good fighter as well. Teddy told me a lot about him. You knew him personally as well. George Levine. Very good fighter he was. Another fighter of Philadelphia, his name was Harry Blitman. I want to quickly show you him. All right, let me pull out the scrapbook. Now I pulled out some books of the smaller weight fighters. This is Frankie Gennaro's scrapbook. The entire book is Frankie Gennaro. Frankie Gennaro dethrones Pancho, which is Pancho Villa, as champion flyweight of America. New York Italian outsmarts Russian Filipino in 15 rounds at the Garden Battle. Decisions and causes a hot controversy. And they were making a big deal about that particular fight. The flyweight boxing championship of the United States is now in the possession of Frankie Gennaro of America, youngster of Italian parentage, who makes his home in little old New York in a sensational 15-round battle fought in Madison Square Garden the night of March 1st. Gennaro dethrones the olive-skinned Filipino Pancho Villa, an America title holder, 112 rounders, 112 pounds, excuse me. So what's happening here, in fact, let's look at this. Figures show Gennaro and Villa like twins. This is the tail of the tape of these two men. And this is the fight right here. You have Frankie Gennaro. And I told you about Frankie Gennaro and Eladio Valdez Black Bill. Gennaro was 19. He couldn't fight midget war gas, so Black Bill would skip over Gennaro. Gennaro was ranked number 1, and Black Bill was ranked number 2. Black Bill had to skip over Gennaro because he was too young, couldn't fight in New York for the New York SAC title. And Black Bill would lose an opportunity because he fought midget war guys who had more experience. This is Pancho Villa and Frankie Gennaro. Now, this is Eddie Cannonball Martin's scrapbook. 1,000 pages, 2,000 front and back. Eddie Cannonball Martin of Brooklyn, New York. He would defeat the Bantamweight Championship. Now, this man here that he would face, Abe Goldstein, was a very, very good fighter. He was a very, very good fighter. In fact, you know what? Let me pull out Abe Goldstein's scrapbook. Man, this is crazy. All right, let me put this away, put it in plastic right away, and get the other book. One moment. Now, I might have showed you this one. This is Abe Goldstein's scrapbook. This is unbelievable. This scrapbook has crazy articles in here. It takes bantamweight title from Joe Lynch. I think I showed you this before. We'll look at it once again. Willie Lewis' protege uses his left hand effectively, winning championship by a decisive margin. But this is the headline of Abe Goldstein. He took the Bantamweight Championship title from Joe Lynch, and that was a big, big deal. A really, really big deal during that time. The Lower East Side went nuts. New York's Bantamweight title to Goldstein. Abe defeats Joe Berman in 12 rounds. Joe Lynch suspended, meets accident on eve of the bout in the Garden. This is crazy. All right, so World Bantamweight title passes from Joe Lynch to Abe Goldstein. I have this exact same article in Joe Lynch's scrapbook. This is crazy. Sometimes I gotta realize what I really have here. This is crazy. Now, this is the last book I'm going to show you. This is another book. This is Fidel LaBarber, and he would win the title from Elkie Clark. This is Elkie Clark to your left and Fidel LaBarber to your right. As you can see, Clark is down. Now, Fidel LaBarber, he was some fighter. He really, really was. He would win the 1924 Olympic Games. LaBarber's victory over Elkie Clark. We talked about that fight as well in the other video. Now, this is the last page I'm going to show you before I put this book away. This is Fidel LaBarber's scrapbook. Fidel LaBarber's Coast sensation is new America's flyweight king after defeating Frankie Gennaro. 19-year-old high school boy, an Olympic champion, springs big surprise, outpointing New Yorker at every angle. Fidel LaBarber puts California on a fistic map, again in blazing colors. Now, LaBarber had won, as you can see here, LaBarber champion fly of 1924. 1924 Olympics, excuse me. But 19 years old. And who was only last February was graduated from Los Angeles High School, was the second Californian to cause a great shock in the ranks. My battery's about to die here. So you see here, Fidel LaBarber and Gennaro, both Olympic stars. Both these men were Olympic stars. All right, let me show you something else with Barber, and I guess we're in this video. I decided to take out Charlie Phil Rosenberg's scrapbook. He has his own scrapbook. He's in there with a fighter by the name of Eddie Shea. Now, I showed you both these men. Charlie Phil Rosenberg snuffs out Eddie Shea. This is Eddie Shea. Strong fighter from Chicago. Rosenberg knocks out Eddie Shea. A great battle for bantamweight title. Chicago meets Fury Chicagoan. Charlie meets Fury Chicagoan at his own game of slugging and wolfs him to dreamland in fourth round. This is so blurry, I can hardly read this. I'm just going to scan a little bit. I'm just going to end this. I also want to show you Charlie Phil Rosenberg. This is Charlie Phil Rosenberg. He was a very good Jewish fighter. My friend Teddy knew him as well. New bantamweight king. Charlie Phil Rosenberg, who won a title from Eddie Cannonball Martin. In fact, let me just show one more and then that's it. Now, I'm going to give you a surprise, all right? I told you I had 2 huge books of black fighters, packed, pages after pages of articles and pictures. Now, this is one of them. I'm just going to show you one picture. Joe Jeanette beats a fighter by the name of Colin Bell, okay? America's heavyweight boxer wins from the Australian champion on points. All right. Now this is Joe Jeanette, the Iron Man of West Hoboken. He takes on Colin Bell. I'm just going to show you that one picture. I have thousands of pictures like this between the two books, front and back, of all the great black fighters in boxing history. All right, so I just wanted to show you that. That's a treat because I have a lot of pictures coming out in the project that I'm currently working on. All right, now I promised you that I was going to put this away. This is Charlie Phil Rosenberg's book one more time. New champion of bantamweight beats Eddie Cannibal Martin and slashing 15-round contest for the title. You can see here, Bantamweight Kings. It gives you a history of the Bantamweight Kings. This is Harlem Hebrew, proved superior boxer, dethroning Brooklyn's Italian after 3 months reign. Let me show you something else. Now, Carl Tremaine, he was a decent fighter. I have a lot of pictures of Carl Tremaine. But unfortunately, he would take on a fighter by the name of Frankie Gennaro. He scores a win over Carl Tremaine. America's flyweight champion concedes slugging bantam 4 pounds and outpoints him in 12 rounds. Eddie Cannonball Martin was something else, man. He was well known in Lower East Side. Very good fighter. This is Frankie Gennaro once again. He drops a decision to Korea. Let me put all these books away before I get paranoid something happened to it. All right, Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Be well. Peace.